Hi everyone, how are you doing? I wanted to discuss adversity this afternoon. This is going to link in with an article I'm going to put on my website later this afternoon. So yeah, just some thoughts regarding adversity. I mean, I think that adversity is quite a strange thing, because ultimately it does come in many different forms and it means different things to different people. So it could be, for example, when I was playing FIFA yesterday, I conceded a last-minute goal, which I was particularly annoyed about because I didn't kind of see how one of my defenders hadn't dealt with the situation. But anyway, I do kind of feel that in society as a whole, especially in the UK, there is some kind of competition to kind of almost say, oh, my situation or my adverse thing that's happened is greater than yours, almost like it's some kind of prize. It's almost seen as the opposite to arrogance, I suppose you could say. I don't really know why that is. I don't think it's particularly an endearing factor, and certainly there's people who deal with genuine adversity or major adversity probably don't appreciate it particularly. But anyway, obviously, there are various different definitions to adversity, and I would say it's a situation which isn't beneficial or puts you in some kind of harm, or puts you in a situation whereby you aren't benefiting, or maybe you've got to put in some hard yards. So I guess technically, you could say that having to eat soup with a fork is an adverse situation. But obviously, I don't think any of us actually really would. We just kind of get on with it. So we deal with adversity daily. It's not something that should come as a surprise to anyone, really. And how we deal with it is something that's very important as we progress through our lives and our careers. And I would say certainly when you were younger, things seem a lot bigger than what they really are. So, for example, if you run out of Coca-Cola or something, it feels like a bigger issue than when you reach adulthood and you just kind of go, okay, well, I'll have a cup of tea then. But certainly understanding how and why things happen, magnitude of certain events, all of this is very important in terms of dealing with adversity. And linked to adversity is the flight or flight situation, whereby when you kind of are given an adverse situation, how do you deal with it? So do you fight the action, or do you flight? I don't know if that's the right word. Basically, let's say, for example, if you have a piece of coursework and you are referred on that piece of coursework, in other words, you don't pass that piece of coursework, is your response, okay, what do I need to do to pass this piece of coursework? Or is your response, oh, actually, I'm not going to pass it again next time around, so I won't bother? So obviously the situation whereby you go, all right, I'm going to do something about this, is your fight response, and the situation where you go, actually, I'm not going to bother, is your flight response. And I do find it quite a lot in students, because actually students get graded a lot, and I think for a lot of students, especially those guys who don't necessarily achieve the top grades, actually what it's doing is putting them in a lot of adverse situations, because you're saying to them a lot, well, you haven't quite met that criteria, therefore you must be some kind of failure. Or let's say, for example, if you don't get your 5 GCSEs, who came up with that number 5? I don't feel there's very much difference between students with 4 or 5 GCSEs. It's just the number that probably a government or an Ofsted minister plucked out of thin air and went, students with 5 GCSEs are clearly amazing, whereas students with 4 are clearly not. And that's actually quite brutal on some students. And also the English and maths factor. where you keep resitting over and over and over again if you don't get your grade 4 or C, when in fact there is really not a huge amount of difference between students who get a grade C or a grade 4, and those students who get high Ds, for example, or high 3s. There's really not a lot of difference between those students, and I don't know where these kind of figures come, in terms of, plucked from thin air. But certainly, your ability to deal with being told that you're not up to that standard again and again and again, is very important. It's what will define you in terms. I would rather have a student who maybe has slightly lower grades but has the ability to go, you know what, okay, so my grade wasn't this, but this is how I'm going to improve, rather than the student who got a slightly higher grade and then just doesn't bother to put any work in. There are students on level 2 who I would much rather employ than students on level 3 because of their work ethic. It's a very different kind of mindset. Those guys can deal with adversity better. But, I do kind of feel that the fact that they get this barrage of assessment doesn't help, because, like I said, if you don't get your grades, it takes quite a strong mind to really kind of be able to deal with that over and over, and especially when you're quite young. I also think that a lot of learners are quite isolated, especially these days, in comparisons when I was at school, comparatively not that long ago in history. Learners these days are probably in contact with more people, but so let's say, for example, they have large friends lists on, I don't know, Instagram or WhatsApp or whatever they're using, and they're in these group chats, so they're constantly talking as a class all the time. However, realistically, they're actually not friends with these people. Realistically, these people are acquaintances, and if they genuinely had an issue in their life, there's not a person there that they could go to about it. Or they're sitting at home, like I am right now, speaking to a microphone. The difference is that I'll turn this off after 10 minutes and go and chat to, other people. Whereas, the student will sit there and, let's be honest, they'll probably procrastinate, rather than actually, spending time with people. And I feel that isolation doesn't help you deal with adversity as well. That's just my personal opinion there. There's a resistance that you have to develop, and I think being around other people helps you develop that. In terms of dealing with adversity, it's quite difficult. A lot of it is a personal skill, a personal attribute, trait, and sometimes it will take quite a lot of time to develop. Sometimes it will be something that you won't develop until you're a bit older. But sometimes you can just take a step back and go, you know what, is this impacting me really? What can I do about this? Who can I talk to about it? So it's tough, I think, especially when you're in education. Now, adversity also impacts on tutors in a slightly different way, but I'm not going to discuss that in great depth at this point. And there will be further videos where I will discuss the role of a teacher and so on. But in terms of being able to deal with adversity, being able to take feedback and go, okay, so maybe I didn't quite achieve that this time around. How am I going to achieve it next time around? How am I going to deal with certain things happening in my life? And flip it into a positive. And sometimes you won't turn the situation into a positive. Also being able to maybe recognise that. Certainly some situations. So, for example, I lost my dog I lost one of the family dogs last year. There isn't really a way that we can flip that and turn that into a positive. However, it does grow you as a person. You get stronger. Although it does obviously hurt at the time. It is tough, and it is pretty brutal out there. But there are lots of methods to try and help you. But thank you again for watching, these videos. Please remember to subscribe if possible, and I will see you again very soon, I hope.